The world is entering a new era of transportation, moving from combustion engines towards electric vehicles. Australia will be left in the past unless the government shifts into gear. Just 0.7% of cars sold last year in Australia were electric, compared to 11% in the UK and Europe, and up to 75% in Norway.
I don't think a sustainable future is possible without electric transportation.
Slava Klavosky is the CEO of EV, Australia's first and largest electric car rental service.
Every developed or developing country has some sort of incentive for electric cars. You know, the most progressive ones is Scandinavia.
Norway leads the world, exempting electric vehicles from taxes, road tolls and parking fees.
You know, we've seen Victoria recently passing the law for the EV tax, which is the per kilometre charge for electric vehicles, which just seems ridiculous. It's a world first decentive, if that's a word, decentivizing the uptake of electric vehicles.
We are the only country in the world to have tax on clean air.
Nash from the Tesla and the Gong YouTube channel is a doctor and Tesla enthusiast, converted to electric vehicles after discovering that petrol fumes triggered his daughter's asthma.
We are knowingly pumping smoke into our children's lungs, particularly cars which are idling outside schools.
Despite the benefits of electric vehicles, Australia's only incentives include reduced stamp duty and registration in some states, as well as reduced luxury car tax. Matt Thistlethwaite, a Labor senator for New South Wales, feels the new EV tax is a step backwards.
The last election, when Labor had that policy to encourage more electric vehicles, more charging infrastructure, the Liberals used it against us with ridiculous claims like it'll be the end of the weekend, that tradies won't be able to have utes anymore. And
John Griffith, owner of the historic Fitzroy Inn in the Southern Highlands, is seeing more and more weekend visitors in electric vehicles.
And we've put in solar panels and electric charging. Big family came through, towing a caravan behind a Tesla. They stayed overnight. Amazing. Bikes on the back of the caravan, the whole thing, and then they were off to Melbourne. The percentage of cars has increased, noticeably increased, over the last year.
While most of the population say they would consider an electric vehicle as their next car, EVs are unaffordable.
There's no electric vehicles in Australia that are available that are under $50,000. There are in other countries within that price bracket, but in Australia there's not, and that's because there's basically no incentives from the Australian government for people to purchase electric vehicles, as there have been in other countries.
Andrew Coates is a senior software engineer and a Tesla owner.
Electric vehicles are still very pricey. When I was looking at buying a new car, I ended up spending probably 3 times what I would have spent on replacing the car I already had. I think there's a lot to be said for reducing things like registration fees. Certainly luxury car tax should be way lower. I think the other thing is there should be incentives for large organisations to completely electrify their fleets as much as possible. And that's the sort of thing that's going to drive more demand in the country. Because you need that kickstart, because the demand will drive the demand for charging stations, which means that there'll be more facilities, which means more people will be able to buy cars, and that will just feed on itself.
With car makers like Volvo, General Motors and Jaguar putting deadlines on their production of petrol-powered cars, Australia urgently needs to step towards electric vehicles.
We're certainly not going to meet our commitments, to basically improve the future for next generations. So it is a bit frustrating and disappointing at the moment.
Eve Cogan, Central News.